So the GMC recently issued new guidance on doctors' use of social media. What did you think of it when it was issued?
Well, it was quite controversial within the blogosphere and people on Twitter and things like that, but I'm not quite sure even how aware everybody else out in the wider world is of it. Do you think they are?
You mean sort of everyday doctors who aren't so well versed in social
media? Have you heard
media?
anybody mention about this new guidance?
I only on the sort of Twitter sphere.
Only on the Twitter sphere, and I think that's the thing. Because what I'm curious about is actually how it's viewed by normal doctors that are going around, because I think social media has been viewed by with a lot of scepticism by a lot of ordinary sort of doctors, or they're using Facebook. I mean, the MPS did a survey which says that 1/3 of doctors are using Facebook daily or something. So we know that people are using social media, but mainly in a very personal way, just the same way that everybody else uses Facebook or whatever. So it's not particularly as a doctor, they're just using it. And it must have sort of seemed strange in a way that the GMC were coming out about guidance about social media at all. And I think, having talked to it, because before it was issued, when it came out in draft form in 2012, and around that time I spoke to one of the people that was working on it, and he asked me to write a little kind of introduction that they put on their webpage around the consultation. And there were some issues that I thought were possibly important issues as we moved into doing this. I think if we think about doctors using, say, a platform professionally like Facebook, if you set up a Facebook page for your practice and things, I think there should be things about how much do we make patients aware of the nature of that space, and how much responsibility do we have for a space where we encourage patients to participate and engage in. So that's something that I thought was important. That's not covered by the guidance at all, and I think that often the guidance doesn't keep up with what the really cutting edge kind of questions are, so we'll have to wait out for another iteration for it to actually help us think about those sort of things, what our responsibilities are. But what it did say, and it did say, and the really good thing is it starts off saying social media can be really quite valuable to you for networking and connecting with other people and learning and engaging. And I think that it can give a lot of credibility to actually being involved and engaged in these spaces for people, because the GMC have seen fit to actually issue guidance about it. So it means that it's kind of on the radar now.
So do you think the positive elements of social media have been slightly overshadowed by this sort of questions about...
I think that's I think the thing that's good moving on. One of the things that they had said in the draft guidance was that when a doctor is speaking in public accessible, I can't remember which word it used in the draft, but when they're speaking online, they should usually identify themselves. And that did not, when this guidance came out, it caused next to no controversy. Everybody read it and sort of thought, well, that's very brief, it's kind of, that seems okay. And then when they published the full version, it stated that doctors should identify themselves by name. So it didn't say usually, it said should. And I don't know why that was changed. It might be that it was just like tighter kind of language that was being used, because at the end of the day, this should and must within GMC, the way our professional regulation works is that good medical practice specifies good practice, that as a professional you read the guidance and you say, how does this fit with my work and my practice, and for me as a professional, what's my judgment about how I put that into practice myself. And if something is should, then it doesn't necessarily always apply to every situation. And the reaction to it was that a lot of people started raising issues that they thought this was really like government interference, that people didn't want whistleblowing within social spaces, that they had to be identified. And I don't know if that's... The GMC would say, oh, we're definitely on for it. The GMC education conference, they said people were raising this. Who do you actually report things to if you're unhappy, if you kind of can't do it to your own trust? And after that, they set up a confidential helpline. They've got other agencies who they can direct you to do it. So it doesn't seem that the GMC are opposed to whistleblowing. I don't see anything that really supports that. But that was raised as a concern. People said, oh, if I'm on Twitter and I've got a pseudonymous blog, or I've got whatever, and it's mainly about knitting, and then I say I'm a doctor, does that mean that I have dinner? And it's like, would that bother anybody? Is this likely to in any way bother anybody, no.
So do you think people have slightly misinterpreted this sort of whole sort of context of this guidance? Because the GMC are about protecting patients, and it's about, the guidance is really, if you're a doctor and you're saying you're a doctor, you should say, well, this is my real name. But have people slightly misinterpreted doctors who are online who don't sort of interact with patients? Has the debate got carried away in a sense?
Yeah, I think that, well, it certainly raised an awful lot of strong feeling, a lot of strong feeling. I wrote a blog post just asking questions, what do you think about this? And there's over 100 comments on it now. That's my most commented blog post ever. So there's a lot of, and people were writing there very much about how they sort of felt an issue, say, around health, that they felt if you had a health problem, that would be an issue, a circumstance where you would not want to reveal your identity while still saying that you're a doctor. And at the same time, well, actually, the process started afterwards, but the RCGP brought out kind of social media, the highway code. They were sort of saying, well, we don't want to say this is definitely, it's not something you have to do, but it's like rules of the road, kind of gives you direction. And then within that, they also said that usually you should probably use your own name because pseudonymity doesn't bring you that much protection, although you might not use your real name for different reasons if you're talking about a sensitive subject or whatever. So the nature of the GMC, I guess, tend to like try to cut everything down. It's quite short. Their guidance is only like a few pages long, a few hundred words, while the RCGP document runs to like, I think, about 27 pages or something like that. So it's a lot more verbose. It's got a lot more context and whatever within it. And I think that was the nature of it, that the GMC one was just really quite brief. So, but to be, to their credit, they actually responded to this kind of outpouring of people being uncertain, and they went and tried to clarify what they thought was where people were concerned about. Yes, we're not going to suddenly start tracking down everybody who says they're on Twitter and said they're not. That's not what it's going to be about. The only way it will not change the reasons that you would come in front of the GMC. It's just that if you were bullying a colleague, or you were breaking confidentiality, and you were doing it without revealing your identity, that might possibly be perceived as being an aggravating factor. That's the way that they've kind of described it, and that's really what it was about.
Quite specific circumstances then.
Yeah.
Well, thanks very much for joining us, Anne Marie.
Thank you.